I would say in today's world, the only constant thing is uncertainty and change.
Welcome, my lovely people, to another fabulous episode of the B2B Sales Trends podcast. Now, selling is harder because buying has changed, right? We hear this and talk about it all the time. But why is that shift really happening? That's the question. And what does it take to handle that change? Well, in B2B selling, the fact is that selling isn't getting harder because buyers lack information. It's getting harder because there is too much of it. By the time a seller shows up, buyers have already researched vendors, compared different options, and formed opinions, often also with the help of AI, of course. Buying groups are bigger, decisions are slower, and discovery doesn't mean what it used to anymore. So today's guest works right in the middle of that shift. Roli Agrawal is the chief of the CEO office, corporate and AI strategy and sales transformation at Entity Data, and she leads global sales transformation in an environment that's shaped by scale, complex buying, and rapid AI adoption. Her focus on how sellers need to rethink their role, not just what they sell, but how they stay relevant when buyers already think they know the answer. Roli, welcome to the B2B Sales Trends podcast.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks for having me. Very happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Let's put some early context and set the scene for this conversation. Can you briefly introduce yourself, your role, and the kind of sales environment you're responsible for?
Sure. So, Harry, let me start with the last one, the sales environment. So, I would say in today's world, the only constant thing is uncertainty and change. So, the change is the only constant. Whether it is geopolitical shocks you talk about, the economic volatility, the climate shocks, the workforce is shifting, and of course, technology shifts, AI being absolutely one of those. The most shocking, if you will, than anything ever before.
Hmm.
And these external forces directly shape how our clients think about the risk and investment and take those decisions. And at the same time, again, in the context of my organization, Entity Data is an organization of about $30 billion scale. It's a large IT services powerhouse. We operate in 50 different countries, and we are the world's only full stack transformation service provider. Everything from the digital infrastructure like data centers, subsea cables, through to infrastructure services, to application services, data consulting, and AI. This all means that we are not selling isolated solutions to our clients, but we are helping very sophisticated clients navigate their end-to-end transformation. And we do this often in an outcome-based or risk-sharing models where we genuinely put our skin in the game. Now, coming to me, I personally sit across, as you mentioned before, corporate strategy, AI strategy, and sales transformation. So I have the privilege of seeing firsthand the changes that we are seeing in the buying environment and how they collide with how sellers actually operate day to day.
Thank you for that introduction, Roli. Now, you're operating at a global scale with complex buying groups and typically long sales cycles, as I understand it. From where you sit, what has fundamentally changed about how buying decisions get made compared to only a few years ago? What would you say?
Yes, that's an interesting shift that I'm seeing, and so the biggest shift I see in the buying patterns, if you will, I would say there are two. One is the buying has become far more collective and far more risk aware. It's not risk averse, it's risk aware. And let me elaborate on the two. So, when I say far more collective, I mean that the decisions no longer sit with one executive. Um, they come out from a group of people or a group of executives who have different priorities, different incentives, different risk tolerance, etc. So earlier, if it was, let's say, a CIO or a CTO taking the decision on the technology buying, now it's the business owner. Still, it's the CIO and CTO in loop. Plus, of course, there is procurement. And then as you sell more outcome-based risk-sharing models, your finance have to be involved as well.
Right.
All these groups come with very different things that they are trying to prioritize. Like IT wants stability, finance wants lowest cost, business wants the best customer experience. So there are actually, they may not be always conflicting, but the priorities are different. And at the same time, it feels like the cost of getting it wrong is very high, which makes the buyer much more cautious, much more deliberate. And as you were saying, the buyers actually arrive incredibly well informed. So the traditional advantage that the sellers have of knowing things that has largely disappeared. But what hasn't disappeared is the need of interpretation, which means helping organization make sense of the options, the trade-offs, the consequences that you were talking about. So yes, and all this is basically results into longer period of indecisions. A lot of times I'm seeing that deals are taking much longer than they used to take before, which means that effective selling now looks very different in this changed buying behavior or buying pattern, if you will.
So, I mean, we can talk about any of these aspects for hours that you have just shared. And I thank you for framing this up so nicely. What are some of the things that, in your opinion, sellers can do to tackle that? The decisions are more collective, you mentioned. That means buying teams are out there. Everybody has a different set of needs. Everybody has a different reason of why they will be doing it. The whole risk awareness piece of things. You mentioned consequences, the uncertainty in these things. Sum up for me, if you would, and sharing with the audience, what do you think that sellers should be doing differently as a consequences of that buying behavior changing?
Absolutely. And if I think about it, I would say there are three things that probably sellers can do differently. The first one is just completely rethink what discovery means.
Hmm.
Because so far the discovery was about information sharing. But now, if if your question is answered by the deck that buyers are bringing, it's already failed.
Hmm.
So you have to rethink the discovery, and the best discovery that I have seen now is kind of hypothesis led. So you go in there, you come up with a point of view on the options, the trade offs, etc., and also some of the risks and incentives of different buyers, and then you try and test that hypothesis. And based on that, you really figure out what clients' needs are, what are the consequences they are ready to accept versus not, etc. So I would say that you have to rethink the discovery and how you do it differently. The second one I would say is when you are thinking about, again, if I think about the collective buying behavior, earlier the alignment was about, okay, you work with one stakeholder, you get their yes, and then you move on, uh, or you again talk to few people, get their agreement, and move on. Now I think that it's more of a decision map or a system map. So the alignment is about, first of all, surfacing the conflicts or the conflicting priorities and incentives of the people, and then making sure as a system of those decision makers or the systems of priorities and incentives, it is working. Which means that, again, the stakeholder alignment, it's not about stakeholder alignment anymore. It's the system alignment that they have to think about and move those decisions forward that way. And then the third one, actually, the third one, I would elaborate a little bit more on the decision forward moving. So I think in the earlier world, our sellers were quite hung up on moving the deals in the CRM system, and they were like, okay, my deal is now in the commit stage, or it is in the decision state, or whatever. I think that doesn't mean much now. What we should track is how the decision is moving forward at the client. Is the client ready to make the decision? How do I help my clients, my buyers, get together and make the decision that works for them? And as I was saying earlier, I mean, a lot of deals I'm seeing now, they're not lost to competitors. They are lost to indecision.
Yeah.
Because you cannot put the group together, you cannot align their priorities and centers, and then they are a little bit more, again, aware, and you don't know in a group who's accountable in the end. So getting all that and moving the decision forward is the third thing I think our sellers need to think about differently.
Hey, a quick pause here, because if you're leading a sales team right now, you will want to hear this. We've just released our new report, the 26 Sales Trends for 2026. It's pulled from the conversations we've had with senior leaders on this very podcast. The themes, the shifts, and the realities shaping how customers buy and how teams need to sell in the new year. It's practical, it's concise, and it's built to help you make better decisions faster. You can download it for free at the link in this description box or at globalperformancegroup.com. Now, let's get back to the conversation. It's a really good one. A couple of things are really important here, I think, for people to take away this. And I'm going to start with your first point. I think rethinking what discovery means is really key. And I wonder if you agree with that. I always, these days, I tell the story that if you think about somebody selling to you, right? And this somebody is asking you the same old boring questions that has everybody else has asked you, and you are basically only confirming their assumptions. That process doesn't add value to you as a buyer. What does add value is really getting the buyer to think differently, not just to find out needs, but to
Yes,
generate new needs in the mind of the buyer.
exactly.
Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely.
Right.
As I said before, if you are confirming just the information that they already have,
Yeah.
you have failed. And the buyers are so well informed today. Before coming to you, they have done their research, they have spoken to their peers, they have spoken to the other people in the market. And of course, now with AI, it's much easier to do all that.
Yep.
So discovery has completely taken a new form, if you will, now. And to your other point, yes, you have to discover their needs, uh, and more needs, but also the consequences. You have to help your buyers understand the consequences of those needs, the consequences of taking the action or inaction, or even partial commitments. So that is what you all need to surface and make sure people are aligned on that. Um, and again, the discovery is also happening in the group. I mean, sometimes I say that if different stakeholders are describing to you differently around what they need, then that is not a miscommunication. That's an insight. And that is the insight that you have to pick and work on and make and move the decision forward accordingly.
I really like how you frame this. And again, you frame this around consequences and helping people to understand, what the cost of no action is. Yeah.
Exactly.
And we always talk about this idea of creating urgency in decision making, right? And in my opinion, there's two reasons why people make decisions. Number one is either to gain an outcome. So if you can help me gain an outcome, then I have urgency to act. And the second thing is to avoid a risk. So if you can help me avoid a risk to my business, then I'm going to progress with the decision. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I think there was this a little bit of thing before that. based on the human psychology as well, a lot of sellers used to play on the artificial urgency that is being created in the system. I think that doesn't work anymore. If at all, that urgency has to come from buyer. And to your point, it has to come because buyer now understands the cost of not making the decision.
Yeah.
That is when the real urgency gets created.
And sometimes sellers really struggle with putting a cost of inaction case together.
Yes.
But when they do, and when they do that well, it's very, very powerful to say, look, this is what you're missing out by every day you're not doing this, right?
Absolutely.
It holds up the case. And again, what does that do? It eliminates uncertainty. It creates urgency, and it helps them also to envision an outcome. If I go with this, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, the only thing I would say is that in today's world, it's very difficult to eliminate the uncertainty. It does it to some extent. But again, it's the process of the discovery and alignment. And
Yeah.
one of the things you need to do there is, okay, these are the three things that are going to be uncertain. These are the three outcomes that can come out of those three things. And what is the scenario planning? If this happens, what are we going to do? If this happens, what are we going to do? And who's going to take the accountability and the associated risks of different scenarios, if you will.
Yeah.
I think scenario planning is probably one of the key tools you can use to mitigate some uncertainty because it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. How does AI come into this? AI is changing both buying and selling behavior at the same time. We all know that. Where do you see AI genuinely helping sellers? And where does sort of human judgment, confidence, and expertise is still making a difference?
No, absolutely. I think that is one of the most fascinating questions these days.
Right.
How's AI going to change everything? And of course, seller role and seller behavior is absolutely one thing that is ripe for disruption, I would say, from AI. But I would say that AI doesn't eliminate the seller's role. It raises the bar for the seller. And let me explain. So AI is genuinely changing the selling. It's not yet super dramatic, but it is still changing it in meaningful ways.
Right.
And it helps both the buyer and the seller. It helps seller prepare fast, analyze the information at scale, see the patterns across accounts, stakeholders, deals, etc., which of course earlier they could not do manually. At the same time, for buyers, as we were saying before, it removes the information asymmetry, right? So buyers and sellers now, when they come together, they start from the same place in terms of what they know. And that just raises the bar of the conversation that you need to have, right? So I would say AI doesn't replace the place where AI doesn't replace the humans is the judgment and the accountability.
Yeah.
So AI can help you with the options, with the risks, the patterns, etc. It can give you some recommendation as well. But in the end, it's the human judgment that and your willingness to own the consequences in your context. So the human judgment in your context is what is still very, very human. Plus, taking the accountability in the high stake decisions and the outcome based model. The other place where human skills become even more important is where the ambiguity is high. And again, there might still be some deals where ambiguity is not as much, but in a lot of deals these days, as we were talking about, because of the uncertainty, we see the ambiguity very high. And in those cases, you absolutely need a seller to help the organizations or the buyers navigate different trade-offs, resolve different conflicts, priorities, etc. Help them make a decision and then stand by that decision.
Mm.
So as I said, AI doesn't eliminate the seller's role; it just raises the bar. And I also call it sometimes silicon paradox, which means the more we automate through the machines, the more human skills will matter.
It's interesting when in our industry, and as you know from our day job, we are a sales enablement boutique, and when all this whole AI piece, push the market, and everybody says, "Oh, all the sellers' role will be replaced." Now, what does that mean for our industry and all this? I said exactly what you said a while ago, saying what matters is the elite level of skill that people need to raise up to, because that's where the future in this is. So developing sellers really to do these things very, very differently, but to a super, super high level of
Yes.
quality. That's what wins the game. Now, let's talk a little bit about talent and behavior. And I really like the three elements that you said, and I noted that down as rethinking what discovery is or means, and the system alignment, not even stakeholder alignment. I'm gonna nick that from you. Thank you. I think that's a really key insight. And also, how do we drive decision making forward? Now, what does all of this mean for talent? Because not every seller is comfortable with that shift. What kind of skills, what kind of mindset, what kind of behaviors separate these sellers going forward from the ones who will fall through and struggle with that? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I would say that the biggest difference is not in the experience or product knowledge, it's the
Mm.
mindset.
Yeah.
And the mindset, it's about the sellers who will adapt well uh, and are very comfortable operating in the uncertain and the ambiguous environment. They are not the ones looking at every answer. They don't need every answer up front, and they don't panic when the buyer's organization is internally conflicted or not clear or ambiguous, because they see that as their job.
Mm.
um, the other thing I would say, as we were talking about before, they are strong sellers today. They are hypothesis led. They form a point of view, they test it, refine it, rather than waiting for the perfect information, because there is no perfect information anymore. Um, and as you took the system map, so I would say that these are the system thinkers,
Mm.
these sellers who can hold the whole system map in their head or draw it easily on paper so that everyone can align. And based on that system map, they can move the decisioning forward in a more coherent way. So I would say that the difference is not discipline or effort, it's where the sellers are focusing their energy. The best sellers are not focusing their energy anymore on managing the process or managing one stakeholder. They are focusing their energy on ensuring that they are making the organization is making the right quality decision, and they are making it at speed. So they are moving the decision forward. So um, the ultimately I see this not as a persuading role, if you will, that we used to see before, but this is helping organization think and succeed in these unprecedented times of uncertainty, I would say. And that's a very different identity, and not everyone may want it.
Yeah. And of course, for that change, right, we need behavior change. We need transformation, right? And this
Yes.
transformation, as we know, doesn't come from a strategy deck, right? It comes from leaders implementing that change and making sure it's driven across the organization or throughout the sales organization. From a leadership perspective, what actually helps sellers change how they think and operate day to day? Uh, what do you think?
Yes, I wish it comes from a strategy deck, but as you said, it
It
absolutely
never
does,
does.
right? Um, so I think sustained behavior change requires a few things to be in place all at the same time. And it applies more broadly as well. It's not just seller, but anyone that you like to change behavior. And of course, it applies to sellers as well. There are a few things that have to be in place. The first, I would say, is that people need a very clear picture of why this change matters. Again, as you said, not the strategy deck, but a concrete view of what the new world looks like, why the old world no longer works, and what this change, what this, for example, in this case, what this buying behavior change, what this means to the seller's own success and relevance, if you will.
Mm.
Because as they say, change is hard, but becoming irrelevant is harder.
Huh.
The second I would say is that, of course, they need the capability to operate differently. Sellers need that capability. And when I say capability, I don't mean the tools or the training, etc., but more so the practical on-ground coaching on how to run these conversations differently when it's a very different environment with multiple buyers, multiple priorities, conflicts, risks, etc. So it's a they need a lot of coaching, practical coaching on ground on how to do these things differently. The third I would say is the incentives, right? So if you are, if the sellers are still measured on the activity, if you will, or the stages that they're moving in the CRM, they will default back to their old behaviors. And finally, and this is my favorite one, I would say, is the role modeling matters. Sellers watch what leaders do far more than what they say. And when leaders coach differently, ask better questions, and are willing to slow things down, like slow down to go fast, if you will, so slow down to improve the quality of the decision making, that actually helps speed things in the longer run. And when we have these four things aligned, I think the magic can happen. Magic can really happen.
Fabulous. Let me sum it up again for our audience here. Why change initially? What's the reason why we should change? Because change is difficult, but becoming irrelevant is even more difficult, to quote you. Then, of course, you need sales leaders and managers to coach to the right behavior on the day-to-day basis. The incentive program needs to be aligned with the change that you want to drive, as well as leaders really need to live their strategy and really role model on a day-to-day basis, so people can see and follow that change. I really like that flow. Very nice. Very nice. Um, let's do a little start, stop, and rethink. If a sales leader who listens to this, right, wants to respond to this new reality that we have just described, right? These new buying processes, this new buying behavior, and the shift that salespeople need to make. What's one thing sales teams should stop doing? What's one thing they should start doing, and one assumption they need to rethink entirely? So let's start with the first thing. What's one thing they should stop doing?
Yes, I think we have kind of covered these, but I really like the stop, start, rethink framing. So let me give it a shot.
Right.
So I think for stop, I would say stop equating progress with activity. So too many teams still confuse the meetings, the stages, the number of calls, etc., that you're doing with the real progress. And in the complex deals, actually, sometimes a lot of activity can mask the indecision rather than move it forward. You may feel like, oh, there's a lot happening, but actually you are not moving forward in the decision. So that is stop, I would say. So just stop equating progress with activity. When it comes to start, I would say manage the decision quality and speed as a second thing, but the first thing is manage the decision quality. That means explicitly asking the question, what decisions are you trying to make? What risks are unresolved, if you will? Is the alignment real, or is everyone coming and saying yes? And maybe the first thing, what is the problem? The problem that we are trying to solve, is that the right problem to solve? And is that the right outcomes to chase? So explicitly asking and aligning people on these questions actually help with the decision quality. And then the rethinking assumption, I think you were saying this before, there was this assumption that the more sellers put pressure on buyers, the quicker the deals close. I think that is a completely wrong assumption now. So we need to rethink that assumption because uh, earlier we used to think sellers can create urgency, but I think in reality, the urgency only sticks when it comes from buyer, and especially it comes from buyers understanding the cost of not deciding or not taking the action. So I think that's the fastest way to respond to this new reality. Uh,
Really like it. Stop equating progress with activity. That's such a. I got to tell you, this is something where a lot of sales leaders will struggle
yes.
because that's very counterintuitive. Because a lot of sales managers, team leaders and sales teams leaders, they are equating activity with progress. And that's very counterintuitive thinking and a thought. And honestly, I think you're spot on. I think you're
Yes.
spot on. I really like it. Um, Fabulous. Let's look ahead a little bit here, right? A few years from now, what do you believe will define truly effective B2B selling and B2B sellers?
Yes. So as I said before, I think the defining trait won't be the knowledge or access to information. It will be having a point of view and overall judgment, and then accountability at the back of it. So if I look ahead, I don't think effective B2B sellers are the ones who know the most or present the information in the best way, because as we were talking before, the AI has completely neutralized that advantage. What will really differentiate the sellers is the judgment, their ability to make sense of the buyer's complex environment, form a point of view, test it, refine it, and then stand behind it in the situations where the answer is not clear or it's not a safe answer, if you will. Standing behind it, of course, with a good logic and a good reason, but that judgment and accountability, I think, will be the most defining trait, because in today's world the sellers, as we were saying before, the sellers have to help organizations navigate ambiguity. um, the sellers have to be comfortable in saying, okay, here is what I had do in your position and here is why, rather than hiding behind the frameworks and the processes. They're like, okay, this is what I think, this is what I believe, these are the reasons, I'm happy to do it in an outcome based model, putting my skin in the game. Because that is what buyers want today. They're not trusting people for their knowledge. They're trusting people for their point of view, their judgment, and the accountability, the things that they're willing to stand behind.
Fully agree. Are you up for a quick fire round of 3 questions here?
I love fire rounds.
Good. So tell me one capability sellers will need far more going forward. One
Okay. I'll say contextual judgment. Because in the world of AI, where AI would provide you all the options, the trade-offs, etc., making the judgment around what's best in that particular context is what would matter the most.
What's one habit, in your opinion, that will hold them back?
Oh, that I'm clear, hiding behind the process.
Mm,
Like, okay, moving the stages forward, the playbooks, the checklist,
all right.
and you're like, okay, I've done my whole checklist, I'm done. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Has the client made the decision? Have they moved forward in the decision as the whole group, as the whole system? That is what helps drive the deal forward.
Right. And last but not least, tell me one word that best describes the future of B2B selling, in your opinion.
Accountable. because decisions have consequences.
Love it. Love it. The final question on every podcast that I've asked in over 100 episodes now is, what, in your opinion, are the top 3 skills of elite salespeople?
Um, so as I said, really understanding the client context, and and in the, if you will, in the discovery phase, trying to understand, what is the real problem? Are we solving for the right problems, and are we hitting the right outcomes? And so what so yes, uh, just thinking that discovery differently, being hypothesis led. That's the first one.
Yep.
The second one is, as I was saying before, being able to hold a very complex system map or the decision system map in their head, or put it on a paper, so that they can help not just move the deal forward, but also help the clients make the right decisions.
Yeah.
And then the third one I would say is comfort with uncertainty and ambiguity. Because even after you have done a deal, you are delivering, the uncertainty will continue to come. You have to manage it. You have to be able to manage it. And being comfortable with uncertainty is what would really help you keep going.
Love it. My lovely people, this has been excellent. According to Roli, it's discovery, think it differently, hold a complex decision making map and go after it, as well as manage the uncertainty. This is what the top 3 skills and behaviors are that people need to be mastering, shall I say, in the world of B2B selling. Roli, this has been a fabulous conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know that our listeners have taken a lot of things away from this conversation and are appreciating your insights and thought leadership. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. I absolutely enjoyed our conversation. So thank you.
My lovely people, if there is one takeaway from this, and there are many, many more, and I think you should not just re-listen to this recording afterwards, because it was full of incredible nuggets of value and pieces of wisdom here where B2B selling is moving. But if there's one thing that's really stands out for me, is the role of the seller isn't disappearing, it's changing, and it's changing drastically. If this episode changed how you think about this topic, share it with a leader who is wrestling with the same reality. And if you want more conversations like this, subscribe wherever you are listening and consuming this podcast from. You can find all episodes at b2bsalestrends.com and, of course, on our YouTube channel, B2B Sales Trends Podcast. Until the next time, my lovely people, take care of yourself, your loved ones, and, of course, your B2B customers. Bye-bye. If you'd like to put yourself or someone you know forward to be a guest on our show, there is a quick form in the show notes to complete. It only takes a minute, and it helps us to find voices and opinions that shape the future of B2B selling. Thank you. We appreciate it.